Good evening to everybody. Welcome at another session with the Saltwater guys from down the coastline. And you are here on For Anglers, the digital platform that keeps fishing alive. Tish, welcome again with us tonight.
Oh, wow. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here this evening. And this evening, I have a rock star, and that is like my opinion. So I can say what I want. From Team KZN and Team South Africa, we have Rob Kyle on the line. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Okay, how's it, Tish? Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. We are so stoked because, and I just hope that the time that Vanna gives me is enough, because Vanna muzzles me after a while and he just shuts me off. So I'm going to jump straight into it because there's so many things that I would like to ask you. And the first thing is, how old were you when you started fishing? Please share with us.
Tish, I don't think there was a time that I didn't fish. Certainly not in living memory. So as far back as I can remember, I've been fishing, and it probably started fishing off the jetty below the house at Cosi, catching glassies on a stick with a piece of nylon on the end.
You have had the most amazing look, the way that I believe every child should grow up. So tell us a little bit more about how you grew up, because that we'll get to it later. This is where you are now. Tell us when you grew up, where, how.
Yeah, so I did have a very privileged childhood. My old man, Dad, Scotty Kyle, worked for what's now Velo as a scientist, and totally spent 40 odd years at Cosi. And I lived there my whole childhood. We were fortunate that Mom and Dad decided to homeschool us, so we didn't get shipped off to boarding school, and we got to spend our entire childhood at Cosi. And it was a childhood I would wish on my best friend's children. It was if I could go back and do my childhood again over and over for the rest of my life, I would.
One of those eat, sleep, and fish, and then wake up and repeat type of things, I hope.
Sometimes it was wake up early, get school out of the way, and then go fishing, but yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. I would like to understand. What was it like? Was it very remote, and you were like out in the sticks? And what did you do on a daily basis?
Look, Cosi's changed a heck of a lot over the years. In the early, as far back as I can remember, it was fairly remote. I mean, there's a Manguzi, which is a town. It's probably back then it was like a half an hour drive from the house at Cosi. And we used to be able to get basic supplies there. But most of the shopping for like the 2 months worth of supplies would come from Pietermaritzburg. Velo head office is in Pietermaritzburg, so Dad used to have to go down there every couple of months for meetings and to catch up with paperwork and stuff. So the folks would do a big shop there, and then we'd go back to Cosi, and we'd basically be there for 2-3 months sometimes, pretty much isolated. Back in the day, before cell phones, there used to be radio comms, and that was about it. We didn't have a landline there. So it started out very remote. And then obviously as times changed and things at the end, it wasn't remote at all. But yeah, it certainly back in the day, it was pretty much out in the sticks. And I wish I could go back to that. That's how life should be, I'm afraid to say.
That's like peace.
Absolutely. We're going to look at some of the catches that you've had over the years, Rob, but I want to also find out from you, how old were you when you started competitive angling? I'm talking about SASA type of angling.
I only really sort of found out that there was such a thing as competitive angling when I was in my early teens. I actually met up with some of the Zululand guys, Julian Parvis, Barry Tedder, those guys on an Oceanographic Research Institute tagging trip that I was helping with at Cape Vidal. They were also on the tagging trip with me. And I got chatting to them and we spent some time together, and they sort of opened my eyes to this world of competitive angling. But unfortunately at that stage, living at Cosi and with it being fairly remote, I wasn't able to get down to where the guys were competing. So my junior years, I wasn't able to compete. And I only sort of started competing when I was I probably fished my first competition when I was about 17. And then from there, as soon as I left Cosi and moved down to Durban to start working at the aquarium, then obviously I had time to start fishing competitions properly.
Now we have to tell the viewers that Rob is What is your position at Ushaka? You work for Ushaka.
Yeah, so I work at Ushaka SeaWorld at the aquarium. My job title is a senior aquarist, and I work on the animal collection department. So we do most of the collecting of animals for the exhibits. Also a lot of maintenance on equipment and handling of animals around the aquarium. So it's basically what I do at work a lot of the time is exactly the same as what I do in my spare time. And I'm fortunate that I'm able to assist the guys from ORI, the Oceanographic Research Institute, which is another branch of SAMRA. So I get to do quite a lot of work with the scientists there with different tagging projects. And yeah, so that's also, I really enjoy that part of my job as well.
So he's catching fish for a job.
I catch them and then I get to look at them for the next years to come. So yeah, it's like catching my own pets.
But I think what strikes me about it is that certainly from that point of view, you understand a lot about behavior and fish behavior and how they react and how they feed, those type of things.
Yeah, Vernon, I can't say how correct you are there. I mean, it can't be overestimated, over implied how much of a difference that makes, being able to, and yes, it helps watching the fish in the aquarium 100%, but for me, where I've learned the most is actually free diving and diving in the sea and watching how the fish react in the wild. Just having that sort of look into their life, it changes how, when you look at the water from the outside, you see something. And then when you look at the water from the inside, you see another picture, and then being able to put those two pictures on top of each other, it just opens up a whole new world. So that's hugely important. And I'd strongly suggest that any up and coming angler gets in the water and spends time under the water, actually looking what's really there, not just from the outside.
Because it helps you to visualize when you're competing or when you're catching, it helps you to visualize. And if you know how it feeds, in terms of bite detection and knowing what that specific species does with bait when he eats it.
Absolutely. I mean, you can watch all the different fish feed in different ways, whether you're watching a big cob eating a sardine, or a raggy eating a yellowtail, or a honeycomb picking up a piece of hake off the floor. They've all got very distinct different feeding patterns. Having said that, the fish in the aquarium feed a lot more aggressively and freely than fish in the wild. The ones in the aquarium are super accustomed to getting food dished up, so they eat a lot more aggressively. But yeah, there's a hang of a lot to learn. Just on that, while we're talking about it, I think one of the things that I've learned the most by working at the aquarium and by collecting animals that come back and go on to the exhibits ultimately is just how important it is to handle the fish that you catch correctly. If you make a mistake, if you handle that fish wrong, if you touch it with dry hands, you can release that fish and it looks absolutely fine, and you can we'll handle it relatively well, bring it back, put it into one of our quarantine facilities. All the fish that we bring back to the aquarium have to go through a quarantine process before they go into the main exhibits. And if that fish hasn't been handled 100% correctly, you'll find sort of 2 or 3, 4 days later, you'll start seeing infection develop on the fish's skin where you touched it that little bit wrong. It opened my eyes to how important correct fish handling really is. We catch it, let it go and think, oh, happy days, it swam off well. But being able to look at them in captivity afterwards has made me realize that, yes, it may have swum off well, but if you don't handle it correctly, there's a good chance that fish might have swum off only to die 3, 4, 5 days later. So, correct fish handling is super important.
Rob, if you had, over and above, there's so many other questions that I want to ask you with regards to your competitive career, but if you could give the smallest piece of advice to any angler, a shore angler that catches a fish and then releases it again, what would your most important, what would your advice be? How to handle that fish? What's the most important part?
It's very simple, Tish. Keep it wet and keep it quick. That's all it is. Get it wherever possible. Keep it in the water. Keep it above the water, and get it back and going as fast as possible. That's as simple as it is.
Tell us about, we're going to see some photos of the GTs that you've caught over the years. Tell us a bit more about these fish. How do you target them? What do you look for? Do you is it live bait? Is it, you know, like a plug, a spoon? You've caught them literally everywhere.
Yeah, just jeets are very close to my heart. Growing up at Cosi, I spent a lot of time targeting them there, and since then they've become a bit of an obsession with me. And I've caught them on everything from plugs to poppers to live baits to dead baits. Yeah, that first picture that came up there, that was one I caught 2018 in the sardine run actually in front of Scotborough of all places. The last place that I would ever have expected to catch a jeet. I was fishing in the sardines, targeting what I thought were sharks, smashing this bait ball. I waded out on some quite hectic reef, managed to get a sardine on at the back. This fish grabbed it, which I thought at the time was a blacktip shark. I fought it really hard, like over some horrific reef. If I'd known that it was a jeet when I hooked it, I'm sure it would have cut me off on principle. But yeah, anyway, when that fish came over the ledge and was lying in front of me, I couldn't believe that it had actually come through that type of terrain. So that was just an example of where these things can pop up. The one that we're looking at now, that fish I caught at Kosi Mouth, I'd always heard of guys like Andy Kutsia and them catching jeets at the mouth at night on surface lures, but I never got around to doing it myself. So as quite often happens, this was the first time that I tried it. We went down for the evening with the family, and I fished a bit of rock and surf in the afternoon. And then when it got dark, I took my heavy spinning rod and a popper, which I got for the purpose. And yeah, I started throwing it, and true's nuts, within probably 20 minutes of throwing, I hooked this fish. And I'll finish off that by saying I haven't hooked another one and doing that at night. But yeah, that was a very special fish for me. It was a big fish too. It was 35 kilos or something like that, if I remember correctly. This one is that's my personal best cheat. Converted to 47.8 kilos. It was caught a long time ago now when I was young in my prime. And that fish I was actually fishing for carcup or green jobfish at just north of Bunga on the beach there. I was throwing I threw a little ocky bait on at that stage, 5 Kendall round.
Yeah.
It was an Assassin S45 HMG with I think it was a Torium 20 and 045 nylon or something. And anyway, I was targeting carcup, wading out on the ledge, throwing onto the reef at the back. And yeah, I hooked this fish again. I thought it was a sandy at the time. Fought it over horrific reef again. And eventually when that thing popped up in front of me, I couldn't believe it too. It was a spectacular fish, and still the biggest fish that I've landed.
It's a massive.
Oh, and this one I'd said it's inside because it looks beautiful. It looks like you're fishing in a dam.
Well, yeah, not quite a dam, but yeah, that's in the lakes at Cosi. There's some really spectacular jeets in those lakes. It's one of those things. Once you learn them, you can fish for them fairly effectively. Ewan, my brother, he spent quite a few years more than I did at Cosi. He did quite a bit of guiding in the area, and he worked them out really well. And with this specific fish, myself and Amy decided we just shoot up for basically one day's fishing. We drove all the way to Cosi for this one day's fishing, and we were going to go and try and target one of these fish. And it worked out, and I got this beautiful fish. It was really cool. Amy was there. She was there for the whole thing, and just an awesome photo opportunity to get a picture of a fish like that when you can hold it in the water, keep it in the water, keep the fish happy, and get some really cool photos. And that fish was caught on relatively light tackle too. I mean, it's a small little 8-foot spinning rod and a soft plastic fished on the surface. So that was very cool.
How do you rate light? Because you quite enjoy fishing with light tackle, if I'm correct. How do you rate the two, or is there a place for both? The heavier tackle, obviously, go for a tournament, and then light tackle. Which one is your favorite?
Because I don't think I have a favorite. I go through just like waves of I'll enjoy one facet for a while, and then I'll start doing another and enjoy that, and so it goes on. So generally, what happens is summer is rock and surf time, and then it goes into like shore game spinning, and then it goes into maybe sardines, but if not sardines, then the yellowfish start, and then by the time the yellowfish end, we sort of back into summer again. So that's sort of how my year progresses, with everything else in between whenever it happens.
It's a tag.
Yeah, that is a tag. Yeah, I try and tag as much of the fish that I catch as possible.
And what did you learn over the years from tagging, and what do you see in terms of behavior?
So no, we've learned so much. Every species is different. So I could chat to you for days about what we've learned from tagging. But yeah, the cheats actually move quite a lot. Especially now, because we've actually done quite a lot of tagging of them with acoustic tracking tags, which is not real-time tracking, but it tracks their movement path, as opposed to with these spaghetti tags. All you know is when you catch it and tag it, you measure it and you record the location. And then if someone catches it later on down the line, they measure it, record the location. So you get where it was and you get where it is now, but you've got no idea of what happened in between. Yeah. Whereas with these acoustic tracking tags that we're putting in some species now, that gives you a path that the fish has swum over the years. So that's really cool. And what that acoustic tracking is showing us is that these jeets specifically actually move a lot. They go right from Mozambique all the way down as far as sort of central Transkei almost, and back again. So they actually do move a lot.
Yeah, tell us about this catch, Robert. Before you do, if you could give advice to anybody that would be interested in tag and release, what would that be?
Yeah, go for it. Tagging is super interesting. What I'd say is, don't tag because you think it's cool. Tag because you've got a passion to learn. It doesn't improve your image if people see that you're tagging fish. You should want to tag fish because you want to contribute to science and want to learn more yourself. And if that's your passion, then 100% I would recommend everybody who wants to tag should tag. And they can. It's as simple as paying a once-off registration fee. I think it's $400. And then after that, your tags and everything are for free. So, and you can contact the guys at Ori. They run the tagging project.
And would you say South Africa, how are we ahead with regards to tagging? Are we making a difference, or are there other countries that we are trying to get to that point or not?
I think ultimately all that tagging does is it gives you insight into what you should be doing and what laws you should be implementing to manage your resources. We've got really good information to base our laws on. The problem is we have very little capacity currently to enforce those regulations. And what the scientists know should be done often is very difficult to get the politicians to implement. So we're in a great position scientifically. We know what we should do, largely as a result of tagging, or certainly tagging is one of the contributors. But there's a big space between what we know should be done and what the politicians are prepared to implement, unfortunately.
Yes, that's a challenge. Let's go on to this beautiful catch of yours. Yes, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that's a green jobfish or a carcup. Again, when I lived at Cosi as a youngster, I caught a few of them on bait, never got one on lure. And then my brother Ewan, he's 3 years younger than me, and he spent, like I mentioned earlier, quite a few more years at Cosi than I did. And he started working these guys out on lure off the side, which hadn't been done too many times before. And yeah, I kept on going back to Cosi, and I kept on not catching a carcup. Like I'd try, and I just couldn't get one on lure. And eventually I got this fish the one morning, and it was a really big carcup. It was the biggest that I've caught. So yeah, it was a special fish to finally break my carcup blob.
Is the needle noses the way to go with them, or is there something else?
There's a couple of different lures. When we started targeting them on lure, we were sort of adamant that like a soft plastic or something like that would be the way to go for them. But over the time we spent targeting them and catching them, these needle nose plugs are definitely one of the most effective lures. I think they're very clever fish. So if they get a good look at a lure, they often turn away and don't eat it. You'll get the chase and you'll come in hot, and then you'll see, oh no, that's not quite right, and turn off at the last minute. Whereas with these surface lures, it's just a silhouette that they're seeing. They're not seeing the whole thing, and you'll often get more commitment on a surface lure than you will on a subsurface lure.
Oh, do you get them on a fast retrieve?
These guys with the needle nose plugs, yeah, you're winding that plug on the surface. It's hopping and skipping all over the place.
Like with Garrick.
Same, yeah, exactly the same retrieve.
Rob, tell me, you fishing for KZN. How many times have you, before we go on to this one, this beautiful freshwater, you started out in Zululand fishing that before you moved on to Team KZN, is that correct?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, my introduction to competitive rock and surf angling was through Barry Tedder and Julian Parvis. So yeah, my natural progression was to join Zululand, and I fished for Zululand for a couple of years, and then I made the Zululand B side. We went and fished Stray Spy, if I remember correctly. I think that was my first senior tournament in the B side, and then from there I progressed to the Zululand A side. I fished 2 nationals for the Zululand A side, And then I ended up taking a little bit of a break from competitive angling, just life got in the way. And when I picked it up again, with being in Durban and working at the aquarium, it just made sense for me to join the KZN club. It was obviously easier to get to the competitions and everything. And yeah, since then I fished for KZN. I think I've got 8 senior caps. I think, could be mistaken.
Let's talk about this freshwater shot of yours. Now you say you enjoy doing this type of thing. Where is it, and when do you do this?
Yeah, so that's a largemouth yellowfish that I got towards the end of last year, and this one was in the Orange River in the Richtersveld, and it's just to me the diversity that we have, especially in South Africa in angling, is one of the features that appeals to me so much. And yeah, this I've always wanted to catch a nice largie on fly. And on this trip, we spent about 5 days moving around the Richtersveld on the Orange. And yeah, I fished for days and days, caught a couple of nice smallmouth yellowfish, but I couldn't get a decent largie. And eventually, on the sort of halfway through the second to last day, I got this fish, and it made the whole trip for me. And it just goes to show how important perseverance is. I think it was like 5 days into the trip before I got this bite. And it makes you start doubting everything, and you're doubting that you've got the right fly, you're doubting that you're fishing it right, you're doubting that you're reading the water right, you're doubting that you're looking for what you think is right. But it just goes to show that perseverance is the key, and it's not specific to fly fishing, it's across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even with tournaments, it's like the same thing, it's so easy to start doubting what you're doing if it's not working at that point.
Rob, earlier we spoke a little bit off camera about diving and seeing, I think it was part of the interview, and actually seeing what happens below the water. Have you done some diving in the Orange River there?
I haven't. I've been to the Orange a couple of times, and it's always been a little bit too dirty to dive effectively. But then on this last trip, the visibility was phenomenal, and I would have loved to have had a mask and snorkel to hop in then. I've subsequently seen some video footage and photos from the Orange, and it looks incredible. Definitely be taking my mask and snorkel in case it's clean enough.
You must actually see the density of fish in that area. You won't believe it. The amount of fish and tilapia species under there. It's just incredible. It
is an amazing system. I couldn't believe the biomass of fish in that river the first time I went there. It's very unique.
So you're going back there sometime?
Shit. As soon as this flippin' lockdown ends and life can return to some form of normal, we were going there in the September school holidays, but now that's all turned upside down. So I'll certainly be back there as soon as I possibly can.
Come on, Rob, share with us what, how, where, and I mean, like bait-wise.
Yeah, so that's my personal best black mussel croaker or punsi. It is another species that I've wanted to catch for many years from the side. I've caught a couple of nice ones off the boat, but yeah, for me, boat fishing doesn't really do it like off the beach does. And it's just been a species that I've always wanted to catch. We actually went down to the Transkei with a mate of mine. We went down for his Bulls Party weekend to a spot that's known to produce these black mussel croaker. And yeah, we fished the one day, didn't really catch too much. I sort of puzzled, spoke to the local guys there, spoke to my mate and the other guys that were with us, and they aimed me in the right direction. And then the one afternoon I went off just by myself, sort of found what looked to me like it should be the right kind of water. And yeah, I ended up getting that fish. I caught it. Had a nice deep rock pool there, fortunately, put it in the rock pool, ran all the way back to the house where the guys were staying, fetched someone to come and take a photo for me. No, it was a cool way to finally get the monkey off my back, because it was a species that I really wanted.
Oh, magnificent. But you rack up species one at a time. So yeah, then we go on to the next one.
It's a punsi's cousin. That's a white mussel croaker. And that was a fish I got early this year down in Plet. My wife's family is from Plet, so we go down there sort of once a year to go and spend some time with them. And I caught this fish at Nature's Valley, which is just down the road. And again, I've caught a couple of decent cracker from the spot. And again, it was quite a miserable afternoon. No one else was really keen to go down to the beach. But yeah, I get bored if I don't go fishing when we're sitting at home. So I went down. And yeah, I got that fish, and I had to phone the family back at the house to drive all the way down the hill to Nature's Valley to come take a photo for me. But there's a bit of a sad end to that story, because as I caught the fish and I held it nicely in a pool the whole time. But from the moment I landed it, I could see the fish blood was pouring out of its gills, despite the circle hook being set perfectly in the side of the mouth. And despite my best effort to revive that fish, it passed on. So it was a very bittersweet catch. That it was a fish that I dreamed of catching, but then to have it die on my hands was very much detracted from the moment.
We had the discussion earlier. I'm saying I don't think I took this photo because otherwise I would take not nice photos. But tell us about this, because this has got a special memory for you as well.
Yeah, so that raggy has a very special place in my heart. It's not a particularly big one or a particularly good looking one, but that was probably the fish that got me my first protea cap. It was the last day of the Strays National. I can't remember which. We fished Strays like 2 times in a row. I can't remember what years they were. Anyway, this was the second of those years. It was the last day. They were like, I think I was doing all right in the tournament, but I wasn't up there. And with like 10 minutes to go, we were fishing by the full nester, that sort of area, if I remember correctly. There were quite a few of us fishing. I'd thrown a mackerel head over the back, hoping for a diamond or something, because there'd been a few diamonds coming out. And we were standing there, not like 10 minutes to go in the tournament. And I think it was a Boerland guy. He was about 50 meters down the beach from me. I saw him getting the classical raggy bite, and he went away with the fish and he leant into it, and he duffed it. And now I was in a quandary. Like I had a bait in the water, but I knew it wasn't the right bait for a raggy, but I didn't want to lose time. So anyway, I ended up quickly winding in, ran back to my box, changed my trace, took a yellowtail, just cut the head off square behind the gills, put the circle hook through its nose, waited as far as I could, and managed to get it just over the lip into the same trough where the other guy had been fishing. And with like a minute to go in the tournament, this raggy started eating my bait, and fortunately managed to hook it and land it. But it's just again, it shows you that it's not over until it's over. I mean, that was down to the last minute.
Perseverance always. And this is just magnificent. I mean, I cannot imagine. I would probably be towed around the point of Cape Town with a fish like this. Tell us a bit about this one.
Yeah, so I think for most dock and surf anglers in KZN, a big sandy is high on the bucket list. Certainly has been for me. I've spent hundreds of hours fishing for sand sharks all around the KZN coast. I've caught a fair number, but I've never got a 100-kilo fish. And last year the conditions lined up. I got this fish at Tinley Manor, which is on the KZN north coast. Yeah, it was just I think it converted to 117 kilos or something like that. It was a really, really cool fish, and just nice to finally tick that 100-kilo mark.
Absolutely magnificent. Now we talk about the diamonds as a girl's best friend, and here it is. So tell us about this. Yeah,
I mean, I think as the saying goes, behind every great fisherman, there's a great woman, and I think that this photo is just to say thank you to my wife, who supports me the whole way through whether it's competitive fishing or my obsession with fishing every waking hour, just about. And she's there most days. She takes amazing photos. She supports me the whole way, and it was quite cool. This day, she was catching fish next to me. It was just a pretty cool day on the beach. It
was a nice double up.
Yeah, we had multiple double ups that day. The diamonds were biting, and it was a really fun day.
Lovely when they bite. Rob, talk to us about this catch.
Yeah, so this was actually on my birthday this January. Now, I had to work in the morning, unfortunately, but I managed to get away. I spoke nicely to my boss and got away at about lunchtime. Went up the coast again to Tinley Manor. The conditions were looking perfect for that area. Got onto the beach, got onto the point, not a beach. Had a throw. From the moment this thing settled on my bait, it was just that classic big flatfish, slow bite, and like fishing on the point at Rapsons is really not a good place to land a big flatfish. And I was by myself again. So eventually when I came tight on the fish just headed south perfectly towards the beach, which they never do. And I managed to get around in front of it, got onto the beach, pulled it onto the surf there, and landed it very easily. There was another angler that actually put down his rod. He was on the rock with me. He put down his rod, came around, helped me land the fish, took a photo for me. So yeah, very cool.
What is this called? What's the exact?
That's a round ribbon tail ray.
Absolutely
Also,
gorgeous.
also commonly referred to as a blob ray in KZN, because they're not the world's strongest fish.
You know, here's
Now,
another ray that's not in the picture.
Yeah, that was not my finest moment, but maybe a story worth telling nonetheless. So we were it was the KZN Colours Evening, a prize giving function, and it was being held at the Durban Ski Boat Club, which is on the beach at Vetshize. If I remember correctly, it was towards the end of the function. I think most of the function was done, and one of my mates was fishing on the beachfront in front of where we were having the prize giving, and he hooked this big flatfish and he was fighting it, and I said, no, cool, I'll help you land it. So I changed out of my blazer. I had a change of clothes behind the seat. Eventually he got the fish into the shore break, and I went down and grabbed it for him. It was a beautiful big thorntail ray, which is a spike on its tail about that long. Happy days. We landed the fish nicely. We took some photos for him. I actually tagged the ray, and then during the release, and I made the mistake. It wasn't the ray's fault that I got poked. I made the mistake. I was pushing the ray with its back pushing the ray by the front into the shore break, and a slightly bigger wave than I anticipated came. And as I pushed, the ray sort of swiveled, and I sort of fell forward. And as the ray swiveled, I fell forward, and the spike went straight into my calf. Fortunately, the spike came out. It didn't break off. But yeah, nonetheless, I ended up in hospital, spent a day or so there, and then had a drain in my leg for the better part of a month. And I've still got a big ding in my leg from where the spike went in. But yeah.
Oh, we've got about a minute left.
okay,
Cool.
well, then we spark through this. Come on, Rob, tell us about this catch, because I love a honeycomb. There is no fish that I think is as beautiful as this one.
No, they're very special and also very close to my heart. They're a strong, fighting, active flatfish, and every one you catch is just more beautiful than the last. This was, again, early this year, and it was my first honey over 100 kilos. I think it converted to 103 kilos. I was caught on the south coast. But yeah, they really are my favorite flatfish by far.
If you could give any advice to an angler that wants to make it, that wants to go where you are, that looks up at you, I mean, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so just in closing, I think the one thing that I would like to contribute as an individual to fishing in South Africa is just increasing people's awareness of the fish. And I mean, ultimately, without the fish, we don't have a hobby. We don't have in my case, a life. And yeah, Tish, you mentioned in the beginning about development, and yes, development is fantastic. We need to bring youngsters into the sport. We need to bring more people into the sport. But what's just as important is we need to educate the people that are already there, as well as the new ones coming in, just about looking after the resource which our sport is dependent on. We need to handle our fish correctly. We need to stick to the regulations that are in place. Ultimately, if we bugger it up, it's not going to come back. We've got one shot at this, and if we mess it up, it's gone. So I want the next generation to have a similar fishing potential as what we've got now. And the way we're going currently, it's not looking promising. So as an angling fraternity as a whole, we need to catch a major wake up. And there's been a fantastic change in the right direction. I fortunately started competitive angling sort of at the same point that we stopped weighing fish and started measuring rather. And that there was a fantastic step in the right direction. And since then, we've stopped gaffing basically altogether. Another huge step in the right direction. So the competitive angling fraternity is taking massive leaps in the right direction. The recreational, the social guys, there's a large percentage of them which are moving in the right direction. But there's still a lot of people that aren't. And some of it's due to ignorance, and some of it's due to deciding to not be wise. But yeah, I think as any ambassador for the sport of fishing in South Africa, your main objective should be preserving the resource which we're all dependent on for our enjoyment.
What a great message. And I would just like to say from our side as a media platform, both for anglers and tight lines, we are all open to that, and we'll help you to get that message out as far as possible. So just know that our publications are open for any contribution along those lines if you want to get the message out. we'll gladly assist with that. I think it is very important.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's not up to individuals. We all need to be singing the same song. I've got some people that enjoy following me. I've got some people that think I'm a big poople. But the more people that are telling the same story, the more people are actually going to start believing it. So I need to say it, you need to say it, Tish needs to say it, the publications need to say it, and that's how you're going to reach the majority of people.
Absolutely. Tish, thank you for bringing along another very interesting angler. That was so great. Rob, thank you for being with us and sharing some good knowledge and sharing a little bit of your heart. To the viewers out there, thank you for spending some time with us. And remember, we will be here next week again, same time, same place, with another saltwater edition on For Anglers, the digital platform that keeps fishing alive. So from us here, we are signing out, and remember, you guys are awesome.